Dear friends, today we are discussing about the topic continuity and discontinuity theories and difference theory in linguistics. Theories about the origin of language can be divided according to their basic assumptions. Some theories are based on the idea that language is so complex that one cannot imagine it simply appearing from nothing in its final form, but that it must have evolved from earlier pre-linguistic systems among our pre-human ancestors. These theories can be called continuity-based theories. The opposite viewpoint is that language is such a unique human trait that it cannot be compared to anything found among non-humans, and that it must therefore have appeared fairly suddenly in the transition from pre-hominids to early man. These theories can be defined as discontinuity based. Continuity theories of language evolution hold that it must have developed gradually, starting among the earliest ancestors of humans, with different features developing at different stages until people's speech resembles what we have today. Meanwhile, discontinuity theories suggest that because there is nothing even remotely similar to compare human language, it is likely to have appeared suddenly within mankind's history. This may have been as a result of genetic mutation within one individual which was passed on through their ancestors and eventually become a dominant ability. The first continuity theory is based on the conviction that there is no fundamental difference between human communication and the communication of animals. Both transmit message to the other members of their species, which can be understood by receiver of the message. The need for communication and the use of sounds, noises and signs is equally important for humans and animals. Although there is a discrepancy in the quantity of possible message, and although the sounds, noises and signs sound or look different, they are all forms of developed language or forms of language in the constantly developing line of evolution. Theorists of this persuasion might picture the development of communication system as a straight road towards language. There is a difference, however, in the form of intelligence of humans and animals. The human intelligence can be called specific, as humans are able to increase the quantity of their language as well as to name abstract things, events and situations. Animals lack of this sort of intelligence, so their kind of intelligence is called non-specific. Specific intelligence is a very important and fundamental essence of language. Discontinuity theory shows human language system as too complex than any other languages on earth. Chomsky, an American linguist, a prominent proponent of discontinuity theory. He is among the world's leading linguists and acknowledges that a possible genetic mutation in one of our human ancestors gave them the ability to speak and understand language, which was passed on to their offspring because of the usefulness of this ability. Darwinist evolution meant that it became dominant feature throughout humanity. He argues that a single chance mutation or change occurred in one individual in the order of 1 million years ago, installing the language faculty in perfect or near perfect form. A majority of linguistic scholars as of 2017 hold continuity based theories, but they vary in how they envision language development. Among those who see language as mostly innate, some notably persons are Steven Pinker avoid speculating about specific precursors in non-human primates, stressing simply that language faculty must have evolved in the usual gradual way. Those who see language as a socially learned tool of communication, such as Michael Tomasello, see it developing from the cognitively controlled aspects of primate communication, these being mostly gestural as opposed to vocal. Continuity theories build on the idea that language exhibits so much complexity that one cannot imagine it simply appearing from nothing in its final form. Therefore, it must have evolved from earlier pre-linguistic systems among our primate ancestors. Discontinuity theory takes the opposite approach, that Language has a unique trait which cannot be compared to anything found among non-humans, must have appeared fairly suddenly during the course of human evolution. Next, we can see what is difference theory. In sociolinguistics, difference theory is a theory in the area of language and gender, which examine the effect that gender has on language use. A main proponent of the theory, a sociolinguist, is Deborah Tannen, whose work, especially her 1990 published book, You Just Don't Understand, is often cited in the discussion of the theory and is considered to be the main reason for its popularization. Difference theory is often compared to the earlier theories of deficit and dominance theory, and like these theories has been subject to a number of criticism. Difference theory has roots in the studies of John Gums, who examined the differences in cross-cultural communication. While difference theory deals with cross-gender communication, the male and female genders are often presented as being two separate cultures, hence the relevance of Gums studies. In her development on the difference theory, Deborah Tannen in particular drew on the work of Daniel Maltz and Ruth Brocker and their 1982 paper, A Cultural Approach to Male-Female Miscommunication, which itself drew on the work of Gums. Mary Talbot makes reference to the term gender-specific culture in her critique of difference theory, and this idea of genders being culturally separated is embodied by 1992 publication Men Are from Mars and Women Are from Venus. The reason for the popularity of Tannen's book, You Just Don't Understand, and the resultant popularization of difference theory is generally attributed to the style of Tannen's work, in which she adopts a neutral position on difference in genderlect, making no value judgments about use of language by either gender. Talbot comments that this means the book provides explanation for domestic disputes without pointing. Then status versus support. Tannen states that for men, the world is a competitive place in which conversation and speech are used to build status, whereas for women, the world is a network of connections and that they use language to seek and offer support. In demonstrating this, Tannen uses the example of her husband and herself, who at one point had jobs in different cities. She remarks that when people commented on this, she interpreted it as being offers of sympathy or support. Her husband, on the other hand, took such comments as being criticism and attempts to put him down. Tannen remarks that this displays the different approaches that women and men take in terms of status and support. Then advice versus understanding. Women seek comfort and sympathy for their problems, whilst men will seek a solution to the problem. Information versus feeling. Tannen states that men's conversation is message oriented, based upon communicating information. For women, conversation is much more important for building relationships and strengthening social links. Then order versus proposals. Men will use direct imperatives when speaking to others. Women encourage the use of super polite forms, let's, would you mind if, like that. Next, conflict versus compromise. Tannen asserts that most women avoid conflict in language at all costs and instead attempt to resolve disagreements without any direct confrontation to maintain positive connection and rapport. Men, on the other hand, are more likely to use confrontation as a way of resolving differences and thereby negotiating status. Tannen supports this view by making reference to the work of Walter J. Ong, whose 1981 publication Fighting for Life asserted that expressed adversiveness is more an element of male culture than the female culture. Tannen stresses that both forms of communication are valid ways of creating involvement and forming bonds. Then independence versus intimacy. Difference theory asserts that in general, men favor independence, while women are more likely to seek intimacy. Tannen demonstrates this with the example of a husband making decision without consulting with his wife. She theorizes that he does so because he does not want to feel a loss of independence that would come from saying, let me consult this with my wife first. Then women on the other hand like to demonstrate that they have to consult with their partner, as this is seen to be the proof of the intimacy of the relationship. Tannen asserts that women seeing the world as a network of connections and relationships view intimacy as key to achieving consensus and avoiding the appearance of superiority, whereas men, who are more likely to view the world in terms of status, see independence as being key to establishing their status. Tannen also clarifies that while both men and women seek independence and intimacy, men are likely to be focused on the former, while women are more likely to focus on the latter. Okay students, let us watch what Deborah Tannen tells about the theory.
I want now to go back and show you, I'm going to be showing you one more videotape where we actually hear what friends say to each other. And the pattern among the boys when they talk to each other, often it's not that they don't talk, they do talk, but what are they doing rather than telling secrets? They're often using language to negotiate their status in the group. So there are high status boys and low status boys, and the high status boys will give orders and push the low status boys around. And it's giving orders and making them stick that actually gives them high status. So if a boy does what he's told, takes orders, then that lowers his status. And there's a lot of talk about who's best at what, trying to take center stage by telling stories, telling jokes, make yourself the center of attention, exactly the opposite of what the girls are trying to do. They're trying not to be the center of attention. So it's very, very different that way. I want to go back now to a videotape. Now, the first tape that I showed you I made myself, but this next video clip I'm going to show you was actually made by Charthouse International. That's a company that made a training video for me about, with me about talking at work, women and men talking at work. And in connection with that, they sent camera crews out and just captured interaction. And first we're going to go and hear the four little boys talking, and I'll tell you what they say because it's a little bit hard to hear. They're talking about how high they can hit a ball. And the first one says, mine's all the way up to there. And the second one says, mine's up to the sky. And the first one says, mine's up to heaven. And you think that's the end of it, but if you keep listening, there's a little boy in the back, and he says, mine's all the way up to God.
Mine's all the way up to there. Mine's up to the sky. Oh! Oh man! Mine's all the way up to heaven. Mine's... Oh! Mine's up all the way up to God.
So what they're doing is using language to top each other. And an interesting thing about understanding gender differences, people that have children of the other sex are often confused by the way their own children speak. And a woman came up to me after hearing me present this and said this explained an experience she had. She had been driving her own little boy and two of his friends somewhere, and they're in the back seat. And one of the boys said, when we went to Disneyland, we stayed 4 days. And the second boy said, when we went to Disneyland, we stayed 5 days. And her little boy said, we're going to move to Disneyland. And she didn't know how to deal with it. You know, she thought, should I expose my own little boy as a liar? No, no, Johnny, don't say that. You know we're not going to move to Disneyland. I said, don't worry about it. The boys know this is a game, and that's the thing about it. It's an important point to make. People say, and I'm often quoted as saying, boys are competitive, girls are cooperative. And it gets this, you get this image that the boys are all out there, you know, mean, trying to get each other, and the girls are also goody-goody cooperating. But both boys and girls are competitive and cooperative. It's just which we put on record and in what way. What we're talking about, everything I'm saying tonight, is about conversational rituals. So for the boys, this is a conversational ritual. You try to top each other, and it's fun. Yeah, man, wow. You know, they're just having fun. So I said to this woman, don't worry about it. They know you're not going to move to Disneyland. But your son won that round because he came up with the best thing to top all the others. Okay, now we're going to hear two little girls, it was the same environment, in the same preschool. And they're playing two at a time, which girls often do, play two at a time. And they're talking about, they're drawing with magic markers, and one of the girls suddenly looks up and says, did you know that my babysitter, called Amber, has already contacts? By which I think she means my babysitter, whose name is Amber, wears contact lenses. And the other girl says, my mom has already contacts, and my dad does too. And that's the kind of thing that I was interested in with repetition. She not only says the same thing, but she mirrors the syntax, the very odd way that she phrased it, has already contacts. And then again, you think it's over, but if you keep listening, the original girl picks her head up again, she lights up like a light bulb, and she says, the same?
Did you know my babysitter called Amber had already contacts? My mom has already contacts, and my dad does too. The same?
The same effort that the boys are putting into proving that they can top each other, the girls are putting an equal amount of effort into proving that they're the same, even if they're not. And just as mothers can be puzzled by their little boys, fathers can be puzzled by their little girls. And the editor who was working with me at Chart House when we were making this video had just that experience. He went home one evening and his little girl said, Daddy, what did you do today? And he said, I edited my video. And she said, I edited my video too. She's showing her love for her father by saying, we're the same. And I wouldn't be at all surprised if this little girl's mother and father didn't wear contacts. She's not talking about contacts, she's talking about the friendship. And she's showing that she likes her friend by saying she's the same. So we have these very different rituals that women and men use. And everything that I'm saying today, in a way, is about conversational rituals. We tend to take conversation very literally. We think we mean what we say literally. People often say to me, wouldn't this be a much better world if everyone just said what they mean? And I always answer, we do say what we mean, but we say it by our own conversational style and using the conversational rituals that have come to us to seem self-evidently right. And that's what women and men also do. So coming with these different experiences as children, where the little boys are using language to try and top each other as their kind of game and trying to negotiate their status, and the girls are using language to try to show they're the same and telling secrets and using language to create that friendship. They grow up with very different expectations about the place of language and the way we use conversational rituals to get done what we want done. Very often, walking away from the same conversation, women and men will have different interpretations. And often, it's because the women are focusing on the question of connection. Is this way of speaking bringing us closer or putting us farther apart? And very often, men are coming to the same conversation with looking at a different axis, different question. Is this conversation putting one of us in a one-up or a one-down position?
When we conclude the topic, we can sum up that both continuity and discontinuity approach exist in the debate of the origin of language. The continuity approach has a Darwinian perspective of language, suggesting the potential for language to have evolved from more primitive forms of animal communication. This theory makes a connection between our human language and rather advanced forms of animal communication, such as bird and whale songs. The essence of discontinuity theory is that the developed full-fledged language faculty of human beings are not a product of a Darwinian theory, but a unique development occurred to the human species. difference theory deals with cross gender communication. The male and female genders are often presented as being two separate cultures.